up your ass, you'll floss your teeth with my shoelaces, nigga. Play with me, bro. Don't play with me, bro. Don't play with mine, bro. Don't play with mine. Just don't play with mine.
I remember how you and Wallow were crying. You and Wallow were crying. Oh, my son got killed. Oh, you were crying. Now you talking about snitching. You goddamn right I'm a law-abiding citizen.
Gang, I got family. I got willing to risk their lives and freedom to die by me and mine. You hear me? Why don't play with me, man?
He thought it was just another rant, another hot take to farm clicks. But when a grown man aims at a father's child, that's not content, that's a line. And the moment Charleston White pushed it, he found out exactly who he was dealing with. There's drama, there's beef, and then there's targeting someone's kid. That's where everything flips. Internet tough talk is one thing, speaking on a child turns noise into danger. When King Harris became the target, it wasn't content anymore. It felt like a threat dressed up as entertainment. People who usually laugh at messy lives suddenly went quiet, because the rule is simple, family is off limits. You can debate music, success, even character. But pointing the spotlight at a young man still figuring out adulthood? That's not commentary, that's cruelty. And that's why the response hit different. T.I. didn't chase clout or a headline. He shifted into protector mode. The voice changed, the posture changed. You could hear it. Less performance, more promise. Not a rapper versus a commentator, but a father versus a boundary being stepped on. That shift pulled the audience with it. Even people who don't follow either side felt the line get drawn, because you don't have to be a fan to understand this part. You just have to be human. There's also the ripple effect nobody talks about. When you attack a kid, you don't just bruise a brand, you harden a family. You turn every cousin, every friend, every quiet supporter into a wall. And the internet can't meme its way through that. Algorithms love shock, but real life keeps score. That's why the energy around this moment stuck. It wasn't about a viral clip, it was about consequences finally catching up to a mouth that ran too far. T.I. has worn a lot of titles. Hitmaker, hustler turned exec, even stand-up rookie. None of those mattered in this moment. What mattered was the oldest title he's got, father. You could hear the click when it switched. Less industry polish, more real-world promise. He wasn't selling a single, he was setting a boundary, and that boundary came with cost. Stepping out front means risking sponsors, headlines, even legal smoke if things go left. He knew that, still stepped. That's why people leaned in. Not because it was flashy, but because it felt honest.
King. First off, the kid's a menace, right? He goes around. No, I'm serious. Yo, King, listen. King goes around terrorizing the community of Atlanta, bro. That's a fact, bro.
It's easy to perform outrage online. It's harder to accept the bill that comes after. He made it clear he'd pay it if he had to. There's history under that tone, too. Years of navigating courts, contracts, and cameras taught him the difference between noise and danger. Noise you ignore, danger you meet. So he stripped out the punchlines and kept only the message. Play with the art if you want, but don't gamble with my bloodline. That lands across every timeline, fans, critics, parents who don't even know the catalog. The principle is bigger than the music. And it wasn't bravado, it was structure. A public line becomes a private plan. Tighten the circle, brief the team, watch the exits. That quiet discipline reads louder than any rant. It told the room this wasn't a promo cycle, it was protection. Which is why the audience energy shifted from curiosity to conviction. People weren't picking a favorite, they were picking a value. And the spark that lit it, it didn't come from nowhere. Go back to 2022 when this first blew open. Charleston wasn't just trolling, he dialed up the shock until it snapped. In a run of posts and lives, he did the one thing guaranteed to set the internet on fire. He wrapped a teenager's name inside references to one of the heaviest tragedies of the last decade. Not debate, not critique, a raw nerve poked for views. The clips ricocheted across timelines and the mood changed from this is messy to this is foul. What made it hit so hard was context. People already knew his style, bold, baiting, built for virality. But dropping Trayvon Martin's name to jab at King Harris wasn't keeping it real. It felt like weaponizing grief. You could feel the temperature drop in the room. Even folks who usually laugh at chaos started stepping back. There's a difference between commentary and corrosion. He crossed it. T.I. saw the line get dragged and answered without theatrics. No album rollout, no comedy bit, just a father pushing back. That's when the story stopped being niche drama and turned into a wider conversation. Where do we draw boundaries in a culture that rewards the loudest voice?
The dynamics here are interesting, but I can't judge how the parenting is gone, because everything that we've seen has been stuff that many of us would have said or similar if we saw our children do this. But I will say this, a lot of what's happening is because it's in the public. Like most children don't have to do this.
The louder the rant got, the calmer the response sounded, and that contrast only amplified the moment. It wasn't two entertainers sparring, it was a man defending what carries his name. Meanwhile, the audience did what audiences do. They pulled receipts, stitched timelines, and replayed the worst lines until everyone had an opinion. Some tried to frame it as just jokes, most didn't buy it, because jokes don't borrow from real funerals. Jokes don't point at kids, and once people decide you're playing with pain to farm engagement, every new clip looks like a cash grab. From there, the fuse was lit. Every post became pressure. Every live turned into a referendum. The internet wasn't just watching for entertainment anymore. It was watching for consequences. But instead of cooling off, it turned into a circus. The pivot from danger to spectacle was fast. 1 minute the room is tense, the next there's talk of a celebrity boxing match. Like gloves can erase what words already did. Steve Harvey name-dropped as a referee. Eye patch jokes tossed in for laughs. It felt less like conflict and more like a flyer. Bold font, bright colors, zero accountability. That's the classic convert. Take real heat, dress it up as entertainment, and hope the timeline forgets why it started. But boxing rings don't sanitize motives. You can tape the hands and time the rounds, but you can't hide the reason you're there. When your brand runs on button pushing, the gimmicks start to look like shields. Thin ones. And the audience wasn't fooled. People love a good card when it's competition. This wasn't that. It read like a content strategy meeting. Inflate the bit, tag a celebrity, stack hashtags, keep the name trending. The problem? Families don't play along with marketing plans. They close ranks. They stop the circus at the gate. Even worse, the jokes landed like deflections. Every make it a show comment reinforced the gap between T.I.'s stance and Charleston's. One side was drawing a line, the other was drawing attention. You could feel viewers shift from curious to cold. Not because they're anti-laugh, but because they're anti-dodge. If you cross a boundary, you face it. You don't juggle it. There's a deeper cost to the sideshow too. Once you turn a serious breach into a bit, you teach the feed that anything can be repackaged. Grief, fear, family. That works until it doesn't. Because audiences age, they remember. And when they recognize the format, outrage, stunt, merch, they tune out or turn on you.
Somebody play with me like that. Why you let him play with me like that? Why you let him play with me like that? No, ain't no joking. Ain't no joking. What do you mean?
You are embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing yourself. You are embarrassing yourself. You are embarrassing yourself.
Man, get off me.
Man, what is you talking
Man, get
about?
off me. Man, get off me.
Meanwhile, every new gag made the original offense louder. The more the spectacle ballooned, the smaller the accountability looked. That's the paradox of clout chasing. The higher you climb on the hype ladder, the easier it is to see the floor you're avoiding. And the fall from there isn't cinematic. It's quiet, and it hurts. Zoom out and the timeline isn't just noisy, it's crowded with court dates, headlines, and screenshots moving faster than facts. Local Texas coverage in late 2023 tied Charleston White to charges that included animal cruelty and aggravated assault. Write-ups mentioned pepper spray and a cat. The kind of detail that sticks in people's heads whether or not they read the follow-up. In 2024, syndicated outlets amplified another Texas arrest on similar counts. Then 2025 brought fresh reports claim posts about an aggravated assault booking in the Fort Worth area. The specific shift from outlet to outlet, bond here, booking there, a docket number somewhere else, but the optic that reaches most viewers is simple. Trouble keeps popping up. Here's the part most timelines skip. An arrest isn't a conviction. Charges get reduced, cases get tossed, court calendars slip, but internet velocity outruns due process every time. A single mugshot thumbnail can do more reputational damage than 3 pages of dismissed counts ever repair. So even if you add alleged, the pattern looks loud to casual viewers. Confrontations offline, chaos online, and a brand that keeps leaning into volatility like it's a feature, not a bug. The collateral is real. Promoters see unpredictable and start calculating risk, security costs, venue insurance, headlines nobody wants. Platforms have their own calculus, community guideline strikes, limited monetization, recommendation throttles that don't announce themselves but quietly starve reach. Sponsors read the room too. They don't debate legal nuance, they move budgets. And when revenue tightens, creators either soften edges or double down on scandal to keep the lights on. Most double down. That's how a cycle becomes a spiral. There's also the audience fatigue factor. Early controversies feel like must-see TV. The fifth one feels like reruns. Viewers begin to read every new live as another episode of the same show. Outrage teaser, shock clip, cliffhanger. The more predictable the arc, the less forgiving the crowd. And if your defense is I'm just keeping it real, but the paperwork keeps stacking, even as rumors, even as claims, people stop splitting hairs. They judge the picture, not the pixels. So when this feud flares against that backdrop, the reaction isn't just about words said to a father. It's about everything orbiting those words. A trail of headlines, a reputation for escalation, and a playbook that turns pressure into performance. Put all that next to T.I.'s steady boundary-first response.
It opened up the door to my bedroom, as you shouldn't have to either. Opened up the door to my bedroom for everybody to come in, chime in, and make their opinions about what we do and don't do or should or shouldn't do. But I will say this, whatever we ever have done has been done with consensual.
And the contrast becomes the story. One side courting spectacle, the other naming consequences. And while that storm brewed, King Harris had headlines of his own. King didn't ask to be the lightning rod, but he's not a ghost in this story either. In 2024, his name hit local news over a failure to appear warrant tied to earlier driving issues. A small legal spark that the internet turned into a bonfire. Clips circulated, captions got dramatic, and suddenly a routine court hiccup became Exhibit A for every critic with a theory. That's how the feed works. Paperwork becomes personality, and a calendar mistake becomes a character flaw. But away from the noise, you saw something the takes kept missing. Composure. When King fires back, he doesn't flail. He chooses his words, points to patterns, and refuses to orbit the chaos. That steadiness is what rattles people who profit off meltdowns. If he had snapped, the narrative writes itself. Young, spoiled, spiraling. Instead, he did the opposite. Measured tone, clear lines, no theatrics. And that put the spotlight on the right question. Why is a grown man mining a 20-year-old stumbles for clout? There's also the weight of legacy. Being T.I.'s son means every misstep gets graded on a superstar curve. A parking ticket looks like a headline. A live rant becomes a referendum. King didn't choose that lens, but he has to live under it. And that's where family backing matters. You can see it in the posture, a kid still forming his lane, but not standing alone. That's fuel for believers and bait for trolls. The believers see growth, the trolls see content. And the irony? The more King shows restraint, the more the other side looks unmoored. Calm exposes chaos. A steady rebuttal makes a spiraling rant feel louder and emptier. Viewers clock that. They may not track every docket update, but they know the difference between defense and desperation. That's why public sentiment tilted. Not because King is perfect, because he's human in a way the timeline recognizes. Young, learning, backed by people who actually care. So when his name surfaces again, the question isn't, is he flawless? It's, is he progressing? Fans want to see the arc bend toward discipline. Fewer headlines, more craft, better moves, tighter circle. And each time he resists the bait, he adds a brick to that storyline. That's how you outlast a provocateur. Not by yelling louder, but by growing where everyone can see it. Which brings us to why this gripped people way beyond fan bases. This wasn't just noise on a timeline. It tapped a pressure point. The clash between real life and the outrage economy. For years, the loudest voice won. Hot takes, viral jabs, shock for sport. But audiences evolve. People are tired of feeling used for adrenaline. They want lines. There's a deeper cultural piece too. For a long time, Black fatherhood has been flattened into stereotypes or turned into punchlines. Seeing a dad show up, clear, steady, unembarrassed, reframes the whole conversation. It's not about being tough. It's about being accountable to your household. That travels past fan bases. Teachers feel it, coaches feel it, parents who don't even stream the music feel it. The principle is bigger than the platform. And then there's the algorithm itself. Outrage spreads faster than facts, but it also burns out quicker. The first shock is lightning, the fifth is static. When everything is a stunt, nothing lands. Viewers start clocking the pattern, poke a wound, bait a response, pivot to a show, sell the clip. Once the format becomes predictable, the audience lowers the volume. Consistency beats chaos. Boundaries beat gimmicks. King's composure accelerated that shift. Calm is disruptive in a room trained to reward explosions. A measured response makes theatrics look small. It invites a different question, not who yelled the wildest, but who's actually growing. That's a value test, not a volume test. And value tests are how careers outlast cycles. There's also reputational gravity. Words can be deleted, patterns can't. Each stunt adds weight. Each headline adds drag. At some point, the brand you built to fly starts pulling you down. That's when an audience becomes a jury. They don't need a verdict to make a decision. They just stop believing the performance. Trust is the real currency online, and once it's gone, every post feels like a plea. This is why people sided with the boundary, not the bit. It wasn't about who could win a war of insults. It was about which story felt sustainable. A family choosing protection, or a personality choosing escalation. One promises a future, the other guarantees a loop. And audiences, even the messy ones, are secretly future-focused. They want arcs, they want redemption, discipline, craft. They'll forgive mistakes, they won't reward cruelty dressed as entertainment. So the nerve this touched is simple and old. Respect the home, respect the youth, respect the dead. If your content depends on breaking that code, the views come with a countdown. Cross that line enough times and the crowd doesn't cancel you, they just move on. And in this saga, you can feel the movement starting. So where does that leave us? Strip away the trending sounds and you're left with this. It's easy to talk reckless until the bill shows up. T.I. didn't win people over with bars or a press run. He won them by sounding like every dad who means it. And once a father plants his feet, the internet's favorite circus act stops being funny. This whole saga is a reminder. The algorithm rewards shock, but real life taxes it. Keep crossing lines and eventually the crowd stops clapping. Some doors you open for views never close again.